Welcome to Bigfoot Encounters. I'm Trevor, and today I'll go over the scariest Bigfoot sightings in history. From a hunter whose rifle did absolutely nothing to Bigfoot at point-blank range, to someone who caught Bigfoot stacking bones into a shrine, and the horrifying thing it did when someone disturbed it. The timestamp blinks 2:14 a.m. in the lower corner of camera 3's frame, and for the first 4 seconds of the clip, there is nothing. Just ponderosa pines at the edge of the motion zone, wet bark catching the infrared, a thin ground fog sitting low across the basin floor. Then the left edge of the frame shifts. Something moves into it from the tree line, and the word that hits me before any conscious thought is enormous. Not bear enormous, not elk enormous, something else entirely. Something that walks upright with the casual authority of a thing that has never once been afraid of what lives in the dark with it. Bigfoot moves through camera 3's field of view like the woods belong to it personally, and the mule deer carcass hanging from its right hand swings like a suitcase, not draped across its shoulders, not cradled, gripped by one rear leg, dangling, the animal's dead weight pulling toward the earth while Bigfoot barely registers the resistance. The deer is big. Later, I estimate a mature doe, probably 140 to 160 pounds field-dressed, and it bounces against the mud with every stride, leaving a trench in the soft ground nearly 8 inches deep that I can make out clearly once daylight hits the same corridor 12 hours later. The shoulder width is extraordinary, at least 36 inches, maybe closer to 40. Far broader than any recorded great ape or human athlete. The arms hang unnaturally long, one carrying the deer, the other swinging with slow, deliberate confidence. The fur is dark, almost black in infrared, wet-looking and matted like it has been forcing through heavy brush. At the 47-yard mark, Bigfoot pauses for 2 seconds, and I can see white breath rising in steady plumes in the cold pre-dawn air. A warm-blooded animal, a very large one, breathing easily under a load that would destroy a person's shoulder. What Bigfoot does not do is stop to eat. The deer is already partially consumed, the ribcage opened somewhere else, but Bigfoot keeps moving. A scavenger would feed there. There is no reason to carry it unless the destination matters more than the meal. The ravine sits 340 yards southwest of camera 3, and that is exactly where Bigfoot goes, without hesitation, without checking, without a single wasted step. There is no wandering in that walk. No exploration. Bigfoot knows where it is going the way I know the path from my truck to my gear locker. By rote, by repetition, by use. Predators kill where it's convenient. What I'm watching here looked like delivery. What happens over the next 10 days will make the first sighting look like a warm-up, because Bigfoot doesn't just come back. Bigfoot comes back every single night, and what it's bringing with it will shatter everything you think you know about apex predator behavior. 3 cameras catch the second visit 48 hours later. The triangulation of all 3 angles gives me something I didn't have before. A complete route. Bigfoot enters from the same tree-line corridor every single time, moves along the same bearing, crosses the same low point in the creek, and disappears into the ravine at the same gap between 2 deadfall cedars. The consistency is not the behavior of an animal wandering through its range. It is the behavior of an animal running an established line, the same way a person drives the same road to work every morning without consciously deciding to. The second carcass is a wild hog, a big boar by the look of the tusks, somewhere in the 250-pound range. Bigfoot carries it the same way. One hand, one leg, the body dragging and bouncing, and moves at the same unhurried pace that somehow covers ground faster than it looks like it should. 3 nights after that, a black-tailed deer. Then an elk calf, half-grown, maybe 5 months old, its spotted summer coat still faintly visible in the infrared. 4 separate animals in 10 days, all transported to the same location, none of them consumed on camera, none of them dropped or abandoned partway through. Always at night, always alone, and always toward the ravine. On the 4th recorded visit, the one with the elk calf, Bigfoot does something that stops me cold when I review the footage. At the 60-yard mark from the camera, Bigfoot simply stops, sets the calf down on the ground with a deliberateness that looks almost careful, then turns and walks back 20 yards toward the tree line, stands completely still, and scans the woods in a slow arc that takes nearly 6 full minutes to complete. not moving, not feeding, just watching. The infrared catches the steam of its breath in slow, regular pulses, and the patience of it is the most unsettling thing I have seen on any of my cameras in 11 years of fieldwork. That 6-minute pause, that's not an animal being cautious. That's an animal running a security check. When Bigfoot is finally satisfied, it returns to the elk calf, picks it back up by the same leg, and continues toward the ravine without hurrying. The whole sequence feels less like wildlife behavior and more like a protocol. That tells me something about the level of intelligence I am dealing with, and it terrifies me accordingly. The rain comes in hard on day 11, a Pacific front that dumps nearly 3 inches across the ridge in under 6 hours and turns every game trail in the basin into a running creek. I almost pull camera 6 that morning because the housing seal has been questionable since September, and I cannot afford to lose another unit to water damage. I decide to leave it. That decision changes everything, because when the front passes and the light comes back in the early afternoon, camera 6 captures the first daylight footage of the ravine floor in the entire 11 weeks the array has been running. And what I see when I pull that card makes me sit down on the tailgate of my truck and stay there for a long time without moving. Bigfoot enters the ravine basin at 2:47 p.m., carrying bones, not a carcass, not a fresh kill. Bones already cleaned to white, long bones from multiple different animals bundled loosely against its chest with one arm, the way a person might carry a load of firewood. The daylight is flat and gray after the rain. Excellent visibility, no infrared grain, no compression artifacts. And for the first time, I can see the ravine itself clearly in the background as Bigfoot moves through the frame. The basin floor is covered in skeletal remains. I pause the footage and lean close to my laptop screen and spend a long time making sure I am seeing what I think I am seeing. I am. Arranged remains, not scattered, not piled randomly the way bones accumulate at a natural kill site where coyotes and ravens and time do the organizing. Arranged, intentionally, unmistakably, with a logic I can see, even if I cannot immediately decode it. Antlers have been stacked together along the north-facing bank, tines interlocked, the largest on the bottom, smaller ones layered ascending. Rib cages, at least 4 of them, from animals of different sizes, have been stood upright against the trunk of a fallen cedar and positioned side by side like books on a shelf. Long bones, femurs, and tibias, and cannon bones from deer and elk have been laid out in parallel rows on a flat section of gravel near the creek, longest to shortest, left to right, and near the water's edge, clustered together with a density that makes the back of my neck tighten, a pile of skulls. Deer skulls, hog skulls, what looks like a bear cub, the elk calf from 3 nights ago, its head already separated and placed with the others. The most frightening monsters are the ones with rituals. Bigfoot kneels at the skull pile and begins working, moving individual skulls with both hands, repositioning them, tilting them, adjusting their orientation with the focused attention of someone rearranging something that has specific rules I am not privy to. Then Bigfoot lifts one elk skull and places it directly on top of a second, larger elk skull and steps back, stands there, looks at the result for nearly 30 seconds without moving, the steam of its breath rising steady in the cold, wet air. Then Bigfoot adjusts the top skull 2 inches to the left, steps back again, and appears satisfied. I watch that sequence 17 times. I count, because what it means is the thing I cannot stop turning over, the thing that sits under every other thought I have had since that afternoon on the tailgate. This is not a feeding site. This is not territory marking in any framework I was trained to recognize. This is maintenance. This is curation. Something is being built here, and Bigfoot is tending it. You think the bone field is just an animal's feeding site? You are completely, devastatingly wrong. And what Camera 6 captures in the daylight after the rains will be the single most disturbing thing ever recorded by a trail camera in North American wilderness history. Camera 2 sits lower than the others, mounted on a basalt outcrop about 14 feet off the ravine floor, angled down into the basin at roughly 35 degrees. I positioned it there in September to capture ground-level movement along the creek corridor, and for 11 weeks it has given me nothing but deer and one bobcat. At 5:51 a.m. on day 13, 17 minutes before official sunrise, Camera 2 earns every hour I spent hiking it into position. The mountain lion enters the frame from the eastern drainage, moving low and deliberate along the creek bank with its belly close to the wet gravel. It is a large tom, easily 180 pounds, with the thick neck and heavy paws of a dominant male in his prime. His movement is confident in the specific way of an animal that has been using this ridgeline long enough to consider it his. He scent marks the cedar stump at the basin entrance without hesitating, then lifts his head and reads the air, nostrils working, ears rotating forward. The smell of blood and old bone is everywhere down here. To a mountain lion, this ravine must smell like the center of the world. Bigfoot comes out of the tree line 40 seconds later, carrying a bundle of long bones against its chest, and stops the instant it clears the cedars. The two animals see each other at the same moment across roughly 30 feet of open gravel. Neither moves. The mountain lion drops into a crouch so fast it looks like a controlled fall, tail rigid, ears flat, every muscle in its hindquarters loading like a spring. Bigfoot stands fully upright, bones still held against its chest, and watches. For 8 seconds, nothing happens. The creek runs. Steam rises from both animals in the cold morning air. The mountain lion growls first, a low, resonant warning that Camera 2's audio picks up clearly, and begins a slow lateral circle, refusing to concede the carcass pile behind it. It is the dominant male's calculation, too much territory at stake to retreat from something it has not yet confirmed it cannot handle. Bigfoot takes one step forward. The mountain lion launches. The cat covers 30 feet in less than a second and hits Bigfoot in the upper chest and shoulder with both front paws extended, claws fully deployed, the impact violent enough to drive both of them backward into the brush at the ravine's edge. Camera 2 shakes on its mount from the concussive force transmitted through the ground. Branches explode. Dirt and wet leaves spray across the lower frame. The mountain lion gets purchase on Bigfoot's shoulder and neck, rear legs raking in the fast churning motion cats use to open abdominal cavities on deer. Bigfoot roars, and the sound is unlike anything in Camera 2's audio record, a deep percussive blast that sends the creek birds out of the willows 200 yards downstream. Bigfoot gets both hands on the lion's torso, pulls it partially free, and drives it sideways into the cedar trunk with enough force to split the bark in a vertical crack I photograph later at nearly 4 feet long. The mountain lion drops, springs again, goes for the face. Bigfoot catches it midair by the throat and foreleg, twists. The front leg snaps with a sound the microphone captures cleanly, a single dense crack like a green branch under a boot. That clip ended all debate for me. This was not a relic hiding from humans. This was an apex predator. Bigfoot drives the lion into the gravel and does not stop until nothing moves, then places the body carefully beside the skull pile. Like everything else that enters this ravine belongs to it now. And now that Bigfoot knows something has been challenging its territory, the patrols begin, the warnings escalate, and what gets left on the trails will make you sick to your stomach. The morning after the mountain lion fight, Camera 1 picks up Bigfoot moving the perimeter at 4:18 a.m., not carrying anything, not transporting a carcass toward the ravine, just walking the boundary line of the basin with a slow, deliberate circuit. By day 15, the patrols are happening twice nightly. By day 17, Camera 4 captures one in full afternoon daylight, 3:22 p.m., the kind of hour when Bigfoot has never once appeared on any of my units across the entire array. The mountain lion fight has changed something in the behavioral calculus, tightened it, charged it. Whatever tolerance Bigfoot previously extended to the surrounding wildlife has been revoked, and the woods around the ravine begin reflecting that revocation in ways I can document and photograph and still barely believe. The tree damage appears first on the northern approach, the same corridor the mountain lion used. 7 ponderosa pines in a 40-yard stretch show fresh damage at heights between 6 and 8 feet off the ground. Not claw marks, which leave parallel grooves with tapered ends, but something broader, more forceful, the bark driven inward in splintered concave impacts that I initially mistake for bear sign until I put a tape measure against the width and realize no bear's forepaw spans 11 inches across. These are strikes. Open-handed, full-force strikes against tree trunks, and the wood underneath the bark is cracked in several of them, not just bruised. What I was looking at on those trees wasn't territorial marking. It was a warning written in a language that anything with a survival instinct could read. The dead coyotes begin appearing on day 18, 3 of them over 4 days, placed at intervals along the 2 main access trails that lead toward the ravine from the southeast. Each one has a broken back, cleanly broken, mid-spine, with no signs of feeding, no tracks from a second predator, no evidence of a chase or a struggle in the surrounding ground. They are simply there, positioned across the trail like barriers, like punctuation. I photograph each one and send the images to a wildlife pathologist contact in Oregon who tells me the spinal trauma is consistent with something applying sudden, massive compressive force directly downward across the animal's back. He asks me what I think did it. I tell him I'm still working on that. The black bear appears on day 20, a sow with 2 cubs moving down the eastern drainage toward the basin in the early morning. Camera 8 captures her approach, her paws at the tree line 80 yards out, and then the sudden full reversal, cubs scrambling to follow before she has cleared the cedars or come within any angle that should have given her a visual or scent read on the ravine. She does not look back. She moves her cubs out of the drainage at a pace just below a run and does not reappear on any camera for the remaining duration of the study. Bigfoot chases her out of frame 11 seconds after she turns, not pursuing to close distance, ensuring departure. This ravine now has one rule: only one animal decides who enters. You think you've seen the worst of what this footage contains? You haven't even come close, because something far more fragile than a mountain lion or a black bear is about to walk into that ravine, and Bigfoot has already been watching him for a very, very long time. Camera 9 is the one I almost never check first. When I pull the card on day 23 and load it into the laptop, I am expecting more of the same. Instead, I get a flashlight beam cutting through the dark at 6:47 p.m., and behind it, a man. He enters the drainage from the south, moving fast and careless, boots hitting the wet ground with the flat-footed confidence of someone who has been in these hills before and does not think they hold anything he needs to be afraid of. He is carrying a rifle slung across his back and a heavy pack that tells me he is planning to be out here for a while. In his left hand, the flashlight sweeps in short arcs, and I can see from the way the beam keeps dropping toward the ground that he is following a blood trail. The mountain lion's blood trail, I realize, tracing backward from the ravine floor along the same corridor the cat used to enter. Someone has been on the ridge line, someone found blood sign and followed it inward. The way poachers follow wounded animals they have no legal right to be pursuing on this land, into a basin they have no permit to enter. I watch him cross Camera 9's field of view and feel the first cold certainty settle into my stomach. He does not know what left that blood. He does not know that the trail lead to Bigfoot, and he does not know that somewhere beyond the tree line at the ravine's edge, something is already aware that he is here. Camera 6 picks him up 14 minutes later at the basin entrance, flashlight sweeping across the bone field for the first time. He stops. The beam moves slowly left to right across the arranged remains, the stacked antlers, the upright rib cages, the long bones laid out in their parallel rows, and even from the camera angle, I can see the change in his posture, the way his shoulders come up, the way his feet stop moving and stay stopped. He stands at the edge of the bone field for 2 full minutes without advancing, the flashlight working back and forth across the skulls near the creek bank. Then he does the thing that makes my chest tighten when I watch it. He walks in. He kicks apart the nearest skull arrangement first, the one closest to the cedar line, his boot scattering 3 deer skulls across the gravel with a casual violence that reads as either bravado or profound ignorance of where he is and what this place means to whatever built it. He crouches and picks up a smaller skull, turns it over in the flashlight beam, and slides it into his pack. Then a second one. He is collecting, treating the bone field like a curiosity, like something he stumbled onto that belongs to no one and therefore belongs to him. Camera 6's audio is not strong enough to capture footsteps at distance, but at the 23-minute mark of the man's time in the basin, something moves at the upper edge of the frame. A darkness that is slightly denser than the surrounding dark, shifting position at the tree line without sound, without the branch snap or leaf crush that any animal of that mass should be producing on wet ground. Bigfoot is at the perimeter. Has been there, I realize when I scrub backward through the footage, since approximately 3 minutes after the man entered the bone field. Bigfoot has been watching him dismantle the shrine for 20 minutes without making a sound, and the patience of that, the absolute stillness of it, is the most frightening thing Camera 6 has ever recorded. When I understood what I was watching, I stopped the footage and sat in the dark for a long time before I could make myself press play again. The man spends another 40 minutes in the basin. He handles bones, repositions himself, photographs things with his phone, moves around the perimeter of the arranged remains with the casual tourism of someone who has no idea he is being observed from a distance of less than 60 feet by something that has already decided what he is. Bigfoot circles the entire time, staying just outside the flashlight's reach, moving only when the beam moves away, patient and systematic and absolutely silent. The circle tightens incrementally over the 40 minutes in a way I can track by watching the density of shadow at the tree line shift position on the camera. By the time the man decides to leave, Bigfoot is no longer at the perimeter. Bigfoot is between him and the drainage exit. The man's flashlight finds the gap in the cedars and he moves toward it, pack heavy with stolen skulls, rifle still slung and useless on his back, and at the moment he reaches the gap, Bigfoot steps out of the dark and fills it completely. The footage captures the man's flashlight beam hitting Bigfoot's center mass and then dropping as the man drops, stumbling backward onto the gravel, and the sound that comes out of him, picked up clearly on Camera 6's audio at that proximity, is not a word. It is not a shout. It is the sound a person makes when every survival instinct fires at once, and the body cannot decide what to do with all of it simultaneously. Bigfoot does not close the distance. Not yet. Bigfoot stands in the gap and watches the man scramble backward into the center of the bone field, and the deliberateness of that, allowing the retreat only in one direction, only deeper in, is when I understood that what I was watching was not an animal reacting. It was an animal that had already decided how this would end and was simply executing the steps in order. The man realizes where he has been herded when his back foot hits the skull pile. He stops, looks behind him, looks back at Bigfoot standing motionless at the only exit. His flashlight hand is shaking badly enough that the beam bounces across the arranged bones in a way that would almost look like a light show if the context were anything other than what it is. He starts talking. I cannot make out words at this audio quality, but the cadence is unmistakable, fast, high, the rhythm of a person bargaining with something that does not recognize the transaction. Bigfoot walks toward him slowly, reaches down near the cedar line without breaking stride, and picks up the broken elk antler that has been lying at the bone field's edge since the mountain lion fight, carries it loose in one hand, continues forward until the man has nowhere left to go and the skull pile is directly at his back. And then Bigfoot simply stops and looks at him for a long moment in the thin beam of the flashlight. What follows next is recorded in full by Camera 6, and I will tell you plainly that I have not watched it more than once. I have not been able to. Bigfoot skins the man alive as he screams in agony. It was slow and methodical and carried out with the same focused deliberateness I watched Bigfoot apply to repositioning skulls and walking perimeter lines and stacking antlers in order of size. The Bone Fields Creek keeps running through all of it. The audio does not spare anything. When it is finished, Bigfoot places what remains at the center of the shrine beside the elk skull pile, arranged with the same care applied to everything else in this ravine. Then Bigfoot walks to the drainage exit, pauses at the gap in the cedars, and looks back at the camera for 11 seconds. The same duration as the Camera 5 look, the same stillness, the same full and complete attention directed straight down the lens. Then Bigfoot walks out of frame and Camera 6 records nothing but the creek and the bone field and the dark for the remaining 4 hours until dawn. I have filed the footage with the appropriate authorities. I have answered their questions. I have not returned to the basin. I do not intend to. What I know now, after 23 days of footage across 9 cameras and more hours of review than I can accurately count, is this. Bigfoot was not hiding in those woods. Bigfoot was not a shy, elusive primate avoiding human contact out of fear. Bigfoot was managing a territory with rules I did not understand until it was too late for someone else. The body cam strapped to my chest is recording, I know that much. But I'm not thinking about documentation. I'm thinking about the sound. It had started maybe 40 seconds ago. A low, grinding roar that vibrated somewhere behind my sternum, layered beneath it something else, something I couldn't name yet. Multiple voices, animal voices, stacked on top of each other in a frequency that made the hair on my forearms lift clean off my skin. There's a brown bear, massive, easily 700 pounds, the kind of animal that rewrites your understanding of what large means. And it is partially off the ground. Not rearing, not lunging, but it was off the ground. Bigfoot is holding it there. I register the something before I register what the something is, the way you sometimes see a shape before you see the object. Upright, 8 feet, maybe more. Covered in dark, matted fur, across shoulders so wide they block the tree line behind them. 2 hands, not paws, locked into the brown bear's shoulder and neck like the animal weighs nothing. Like the 700-pound apex predator is a problem to be repositioned rather than a threat to be respected. I don't say it out loud, I don't say anything. I drop behind a fallen Douglas fir, roughly chest high, and I press myself against the bark and I stare. My mind is split cleanly in half. One half cataloging details with the flat mechanical efficiency of someone who's been trained to observe, the other half dissolving into something close to static. The bear is fighting. Its back legs rake the air, its jaws snap sideways, and every motion it makes is being absorbed and ignored by Bigfoot the way a person might absorb a shove from a child. Then the second bear hits. How does a second apex predator change the rules of something that already makes no sense? It comes from my left, full sprint, head low, a charge with total commitment behind it. The collision sounds like a car accident. Bigfoot doesn't go down. Bigfoot doesn't stagger. Bigfoot pivots, and in the pivoting uses the first bear's body as a buffer, rotating the two of them so that the charging bear catches 700 pounds of its own species instead of reaching its target. The sound that follows isn't a growl or a roar. It's harder than that. It's structural, a bone snapping somewhere in that tangle of fur and weight, a single percussive crack that cuts through every other sound in the gully like a blade. I stop breathing. What I notice is that the first bear's body, thrown aside now, lands about 12 feet from where I'm crouching. I feel the impact through the ground. Blood catches the air before the body stops moving, a fine dark spray that mists across the ferns to my right and dots the edge of my lens. The second bear circles, its pacing short arcs at the edge of the gully, head swinging side to side, and something about its body language strikes me even then. This isn't dominance behavior. This is confusion. This is an animal that has never encountered something it couldn't categorize, encountering exactly that. I understand the feeling completely with Bigfoot. Out of nowhere, the third bear enters from the tree line east of me, drawn in by the noise, and I whisper into my radio without looking at it. Bigfoot doesn't acknowledge the third bear immediately. Bigfoot is already turning back toward the second, and there's something in that turning, in the total absence of panic, of urgency, of any readable fear, that lands on me harder than the roaring had. The bears are reacting. Everything in this gully is reacting. Bigfoot is deciding. The first bear's body is still sliding when Bigfoot throws it, not drops it, throws it. There's a rotational force behind the motion, a full torso pivot that releases the animal outward and downward, and the body lands with a sound like a sandbag dropped from a roof, 12 feet from my position. I feel it again through the soles of my boots, that ground transmission of mass and impact, and I press harder into the log and do not move. The blood from the initial spray has reached the ferns closest to me. I watch. It bead on the waxy leaves without letting my eyes move too far from Bigfoot, because something in my gut has already decided that taking my eyes off Bigfoot is the specific kind of mistake you don't recover from. The second bear is still circling. I watch its behavior shift in real time, the short arcs getting shorter, the head swinging slowing, the pacing losing rhythm. It's losing the thread of what it came here to do. Bears are decisive animals. They charge or they flee. They dominate or they submit. And the entire behavioral framework they operate inside assumes a world that responds predictably to size and aggression. The second bear is discovering, the same way I'm discovering, that Bigfoot does not respond predictably to anything. When instinct stops working, what replaces it? Panic or calculation? I whisper into the radio again, trying to call backup. Pure static with a faint digital warble underneath it, the sound of a signal finding no anchor. I clip it back to my shoulder without taking my eyes off the gully. Bigfoot beats its chest once. I've heard chimpanzees do this in recordings. I've read about gorillas. This is neither of those things. The sound Bigfoot produces is lower than anything I have a reference for. Not a slap against hollow bone, but something deeper. A concussive thud that I feel in my chest cavity more than I hear it with my ears. One beat, deliberate, and then silence. And then something I am not prepared for. The second bear stops circling. The third bear, just inside the tree line, freezes mid-step. Both animals go still in a way that isn't stillness, it's paralysis. For roughly 2 full seconds, nothing in that gully moves except wind through the upper canopy. I do not move either. The second bear breaks first. It lunges, fast, committed, head low, and this time I have an unobstructed view of what Bigfoot does in response. The sidestep is wrong. Not wrong as in mistaken, wrong as in physically inconsistent with the size of the body performing it. Something that large should need more time, more ground, more preparation to redirect momentum. Bigfoot needs none of it. The sidestep happens between one frame and the next, smooth and completely unhurried, and then the second bear's forelimb is in Bigfoot's grip, and the bear's own forward momentum is being used against it. The bear hits the tree to my left at an angle that puts all of that redirected momentum into bark. The crack is enormous. Not the bear's limb, but the tree itself. A vertical split up the trunk, a white wound in the dark bark, sap visible at the break edge. The bear rebounds off it, disoriented, shaking its head with the loose, heavy motion of something trying to clear a bell from its skull. Then the third bear commits to Bigfoot. If it still chooses to attack, is it bravery or misunderstanding? I hear it before I fully see it. The sound of something heavy accelerating through underbrush with total intention behind it. Full sprint, straight line, no hesitation. The third bear has apparently decided that whatever Bigfoot's chest beat meant, it wasn't enough to outweigh whatever calculation bears make when they decide to fight. I find myself whispering something under my breath, just the word "don't," barely voiced. I begin moving backward up the slope, slow, controlled steps, weight transferred heel to toe, no sudden shifts. The third bear closes the distance in under 3 seconds. Bigfoot is already turning. The collision that follows erases everything I thought I understood about the upper boundary of physical force. Both bodies are fully vertical when they meet. Bigfoot upright, the bear rearing into the grapple, and they stay that way, locked and straining for several seconds that feel nothing like seconds. In my chest, I feel each shift of weight like a small tremor. Behind me, on the slope, my left boot finds loose earth, and I correct before I go down, but it's close. The camera blurs on the motion, and when it refocuses, the two of them are still standing, still locked together, and I realize I've stopped retreating entirely. I've stopped moving because I cannot stop watching. Predators don't do this. Prey doesn't do this. What Bigfoot is doing in the 30 seconds following the grapple with the third bear is something I'd associate with a person, with a trained person, with someone who has done this before and remembers what worked. Bigfoot is choosing the ground. When terrain becomes strategy, how much of the fight is already decided. The two large trees are maybe 15 feet apart, their root systems surfacing from the slope in thick, gnarled ridges that make the terrain between them uneven and narrow. Bigfoot moves to that gap. The effect is immediate. The two bears still on their feet, the second, recovered from the tree impact, and the third, circling after the grapple, are suddenly constrained. To reach Bigfoot, they have to come through a corridor roughly 10 feet wide, root broken underfoot, with their flanks exposed to the trees on either side. Two animals that fight best with space and momentum have just been funneled into a space that neutralizes both. If the battlefield is being shaped around you, how long before you realize you were never the observer? I am crouched 20 yards uphill, watching a Bigfoot run a tactical engagement, and I have no one to tell. My sidearm is on my hip and has not crossed my mind once, because everything that's happened in this gully has made it feel like the most irrelevant object on Earth. The first bear, the one Bigfoot threw, the one that hit the ground 12 feet from my position, attempts to rise. I'd been tracking it in my peripheral vision. One foreleg plants, then the other. The head lifts, swinging low, and for a moment, I think it might actually regain its feet. Then the footage shows Bigfoot steps toward it. No rush, not even a charge. A single step, weight fully committed downward on the bear's head, and the stomp that follows lands with the totality of every pound Bigfoot carries concentrated into one point of contact. The camera catches the aftermath, a paw twitching in the dirt, 2 brief contractions, and then a stillness that is different in quality from unconsciousness. The stillness of something finished. At what point does fight stop being the right word for what I'm documenting here? The second bear has been circling the gap between the trees, testing angles, and now it finds one it likes, or convinces itself it does. The charge is fast, lower to the ground than the previous attempts. Head tucked in the way bears charge when they've learned that the high approach doesn't work. It learns nothing new. Bigfoot meets it head-on this time. No sidestep, no redirect, straight engagement, both bodies colliding with full commitment, and suddenly they're vertical again, upright and grappling. They stay upright for what the timestamp later tells me is 4 seconds. It feels like a minute. Then the third bear makes its move. It's been circling Bigfoot's rear, patient in a way I haven't seen from it before, and I wonder if something has shifted in its calculation. Then it seems to see an opening because it commits. Full sprint, closing the gap from behind while Bigfoot is locked upright with the second bear. If it succeeds here, does the entire hierarchy I just witnessed collapse instantly? What happens next, I cannot fully track in real time. I know this because I've watched the footage 40 times, frame by frame, and even with that advantage, it's difficult. Bigfoot drops its weight backward, not falls, drops with intent, using the second bear's forward pressure to accelerate the descent, so that the second bear's own pushing becomes the force that drives both of them down, and Bigfoot lands on top with the second bear absorbed underneath. The twist in Bigfoot's torso happens simultaneously, a rotation that seems physically incompatible with the position, spine and shoulder, moving in a direction that shouldn't be available mid-fall. The third bear's jaws connect with Bigfoot's upper back a fraction of a second after the impact. I hear the contact, a dense, wet sound beneath the roaring. Bigfoot reaches back without looking. The hand finds the third bear's skull the way you'd find a doorknob in the dark. Without searching, without hesitation, purely by knowing where it is. What follows is a rotational movement so fast the camera can't resolve it cleanly. The footage shows blur, then a different arrangement of bodies, then the third bear impacting the root-broken ground between the trees with a force that sends loose soil outward. I realize Bigfoot's speed, the actual unfiltered speed of it, is something my eyes simply refuse to process in real time. How much of reality have I already missed just by being human? Bigfoot is standing, fully upright, unobstructed, the tree line, behind providing a clean contrast that makes the scale undeniable. I had thought 8 feet when I first saw Bigfoot. I revised that estimate upward now. The shoulders are extraordinary, not wide the way a bodybuilder is wide, but wide the way a doorframe is wide. Structurally wide, wide as a design feature. The fur across the upper body is darker than the legs, matted in irregular patches, and the posture is vertical in a way that no bear ever achieves. No ape I've ever seen footage of ever quite manages. Fully, completely, unnervingly upright. The head turns, not all the way toward me, maybe 20 degrees off the forward axis. I watch the profile of Bigfoot's face for the first time. The heavy brow shelf, the flat nasal structure, the jaw that is human in proportion in a way that is deeply, specifically wrong, given everything surrounding it. There is no expression I can read. There is no agitation, no confusion, no exertion written anywhere in that posture. Bigfoot has just concluded a physical engagement with multiple bears, 2 of which are no longer moving, and is standing in the aftermath with the composure of someone who has finished a task and is considering the next one. The third bear, the one I'd watched absorb the most punishment after the first, is moving again, limping badly, one forelimb tracking wrong, its gait a lurching diagonal that carries it toward the eastern tree line at the only pace it can still manage. I watch it go without moving. Bigfoot watches it go too, and then does something I don't expect. Bigfoot lets it leave. No pursuit, no reaction, no repositioning. The retreating bear simply ceases to be a priority, and Bigfoot's attention completes its slow rotation, away from the limping bear, back downhill, forward along the slope, toward me. If I was never the target until now, what changed in the calculation? The advance is gradual, just a slow, measured movement downhill, closing the distance between Bigfoot and my position with the unhurried confidence of something that has no reason to hurry. I do not run. Bigfoot stops at 30 feet. Bigfoot is deciding what I am. Then the stillness breaks from my left. I don't see it coming. Nobody would. The third bear, the one I watched limp into the eastern tree line 40 seconds ago, the one I'd mentally filed under resolved, comes out of the brush at full speed with absolutely nothing in its movement that suggests it should be capable of full speed. One moment there is silence and 30 feet of open air between me and Bigfoot, and the next moment there is 400 pounds of wounded brown bear crossing my peripheral vision so close that I feel the displaced air against the side of my face. My body reacts before my brain does. I flinch hard left, the camera swings wide, and for 2 full seconds the footage is nothing but spinning canopy and a slice of gray sky and the audio record of my own voice making a sound I have no word for. When the lens finds the gully again, Bigfoot is already moving. The intercept happens at a point maybe 10 feet downhill from where I'm crouched. Bigfoot has closed the gap between them. In a time interval the footage cannot cleanly resolve, and the collision that follows is lateral, a full-body intercept that catches the bear mid-stride and converts its forward momentum into a shared downhill trajectory. Both of them go down the slope together, a tangle of mass and motion that passes within 10 feet of my left side, and I am already moving backward, hands and feet, crab scrambling uphill with the body cam swinging and my boots churning loose earth, and every trained instinct I have screaming the same single instruction. At what point does distance stop meaning safety entirely? What I see reconfigures everything I thought I'd already processed about what Bigfoot is capable of. The bear is chest down. Bigfoot is on top of it, positioned across its back with a forearm laid horizontal across the base of the bear's neck. And the pressure being applied is not explosive. It's not a single violent motion aimed at a fast conclusion. The bear's front claws are working the soil, dragging backward furrows in the earth, 4 parallel gouges that deepen and then slow as I watch. Its back legs kick in irregular rhythm, finding no leverage against the weight above them. Bigfoot does not adjust, does not shift, does not show any indication that the resistance below is presenting a meaningful problem. Just maintains, sustains, and applies pressure. The bear's resistance changes. The quality of its struggle shifts from active fighting to something more reflexive, more mechanical, the movement of a system running on diminishing signal rather than intention. The claw marks in the soil get shallower. The back legs find a rhythm and then lose it. Bigfoot increases the pressure. Not dramatically. There's no visible surge, no repositioning, no escalation in the conventional sense. Just a slight, almost imperceptible addition of downward force, the way you'd turn a volume dial one click at a time. I watch the bear's body absorb it. I watch the soil around its claws stop moving. Below me, the bear goes still. Bigfoot maintains position for several seconds beyond the point of necessity. Then the footage shows Bigfoot standing. The motion is unhurried, weight shifting upward in a single smooth sequence. And for a moment, Bigfoot is fully upright again against the slope, with all 3 bears motionless in the frame around it, and the light falling through the canopy in long, late afternoon columns that make the whole scene look briefly, absurdly, like something composed rather than something that happened. And then, out of nowhere, the birds go first. Not 1 or 2 startled from a nearby branch. The entire canopy empties in a single sustained eruption. What did they sense that I still haven't? The distant vocalizations start. They come from the north first, a low, resonant sound that I feel in my back molars before I consciously hear it. These are bear sounds responding to each other. How many bears are in this section of forest right now, I do not know. Bigfoot emits its own vocalization. It lasts approximately 4 seconds. Then the trees move. I hear her before I see her. The sound enters the audio record as a low, rapid huffing, and it is so qualitatively different from every other sound this gully has produced. It is the sound of a brown bear mother who has decided that whatever is between her and her cubs needs to cease to exist. And it is the single most dangerous sound these forests produce. My blood goes cold in a way that has nothing to do with the temperature. I bring the camera right. The sow emerges from the brush at 40 yards, roughly 600 pounds, head dropped low, ears pinned flat against her skull, the whites of her eyes visible even at distance. Her gait is the stiff-legged, ground-eating trot of an animal that has already made its decision and is now simply closing the distance required to execute Bigfoot. Behind her, half obscured by the brush she's just pushed through, I catch 2 smaller shapes. Juveniles, not cubs, Yearlings maybe, large enough to be mobile, but small enough that every instinct in their mother's body is currently organized around a single, non-negotiable directive. If she's protecting them, what happens to them if she falls here? This is the worst-case scenario in my professional experience, and she is 40 yards from Bigfoot. The first charge is a bluff. She covers 15 yards in under 2 seconds, a speed that is shocking every single time you witness it. The message is explicit. Every bear I have ever watched receive this charge has responded to it, even large males, even apex predators with clear physical advantages. Bigfoot does not move, not a step back, not a shift in weight, not an adjustment of stance. Bigfoot receives the bluff charge from 40 yards away and responds by lowering the center of gravity slightly. A subtle bending at the knees, a widening of the base, the specific postural adjustment of something that is choosing to be harder to move. It is, I realize, the first time in this entire encounter that I have watched Bigfoot take a defensive posture. Not retreat, not even preparation for retreat, just a quiet, deliberate rooting into the ground. This is also the first engagement that Bigfoot has not initiated. If Bigfoot didn't choose this fight, what does that imply about what chose it? The sow does not receive this non-response well. The second charge is not a bluff. I can see the difference in the first stride. The head stays low, instead of lifting at the commitment point. She is fully committed before she covers 10 yards. The impact when she connects with Bigfoot is the loudest single sound the gully has produced, louder than the chest beat, louder than the tree impact, a deep, full-mass collision that rolls up the slope and bounces off the timber behind me and seems to compress the air between us. Bigfoot gives ground, 6 feet, maybe 8. I measure it afterward against the soil disturbance visible in the footage, a backward tracking, feet finding purchase and losing it, and finding it again. The first instance in this entire encounter of Bigfoot being moved by an external force rather than choosing to move. The sow is driving forward with everything she has. Continuous force, no pause, no reset, just sustained pressure from 600 pounds of maternal fury. She is not fighting to win. She is fighting because fighting is the only mode she has left. Bigfoot grapples rather than redirects this time, both hands finding purchase on the sow's upper body, and they grind backward together across the soil in a struggle that is slower and heavier than anything that's come before. Less explosive, more elemental. Two bodies testing the absolute outer limit of what each can produce. Then Bigfoot shifts the grip. One arm moves under the sow's torso, a repositioning that takes less than a second, but requires Bigfoot to absorb additional impact during the transition, accepting the cost in order to change the geometry. The other hand finds the shoulder, and then there is a pivot, a controlled rotation that does not try to overpower the sow's forward drive, but instead takes that drive and turns it 90 degrees, redirecting it laterally, and the sow hits the tree to Bigfoot's right with a force that strips bark off the trunk in a vertical sheet. If force can be redirected this cleanly, was the outcome ever hers to decide? The footage shows that she recovers fast, faster than she should. She comes back snapping, jaws working in rapid audible clacks, a sound that is almost mechanical, and she finds Bigfoot's forearm in the chaos. The bite connects. I watch it connect. A glancing grip, not a full lock, but contact, real contact, force applied, the first time anything in this gully has successfully landed on Bigfoot. On the footage, the moment is visible for perhaps 3 frames before the motion takes it out of frame. In the moment, I breathe 2 words that the audio captures with complete clarity. Bigfoot met its match, and it can be hurt. Bigfoot's response to the bite is not a flint. It is an escalation that happens so fast, it functionally bypasses the intermediate stages. No buildup, no warning, no graduated increase. One moment, the grapple is ongoing, the sow driving and snapping and refusing every attempt at displacement, and the next Bigfoot has changed the terms entirely. A partial lift, not full elevation, not the clean overhead control of the first bear, but enough to destabilize, enough to break the sow's ground contact and interrupt the mechanical advantage her weight provides. Then a downward drive at an angle, using the partial elevation to convert Bigfoot's mass into a directional force, and the sow hits the ground with an impact that sends debris outward. The struggle continues on the ground. The sow is not done. I need to be clear about that because the footage makes it easy to miss how long she keeps fighting. She rolls, she snaps, she drives her back legs against the earth trying to find the leverage to reverse their positions. Bigfoot adjusts continuously, not reacting to each individual attempt, but staying ahead of them, a top position maintained through constant small corrections rather than a single pinning force. The movements become more controlled as the seconds accumulate, less explosive, more like management than combat. In the brush behind the sow, the two smaller shapes have gone still. They are not approaching. They are not retreating either, just present at the margin, watching with the wide-eyed frozen attention of juveniles who do not yet have a category for what they're seeing. If they survive this, what do they become afterward? The sow's resistance slows, not dramatically, not in any single identifiable moment. It slows the way a fire slows when the fuel runs low, a gradual dimming of the intensity rather than an extinguishing. Bigfoot increases the downward force by degrees, so small I can only infer them from the sow's response. Her focus never leaves Bigfoot. Even now, even as the resistance fades, she is not looking at me or at the tree line or at her juveniles in the brush. Complete tunnel vision. Whatever Bigfoot represents to her maternal brain, it is the only thing in the world that matters. The intermittent movement becomes infrequent, then rare, then still. Bigfoot holds the position for several seconds, past the point where holding it is mechanically necessary. I note this, the same way I noted it, with the third bear, the sustained contact beyond conclusion, the refusal to disengage early, the patience that might be caution or might be something else entirely. Then Bigfoot stands, fully upright, the sow motionless below, and for a moment the late afternoon light catches Bigfoot's posture in a way that is almost unbearably clear. The forearm where the bite landed, I look for damage. The footage is not high enough resolution at this distance to show me what I want to see, but the way Bigfoot holds that arm is different from how it was held before. A subtle difference, a degree of self-awareness in the posture of it that suggests the bite registered in some ongoing way. In the brush, the juveniles retreat, quietly, without the crashing urgency of flight, just a gradual withdrawal, shapes becoming less distinct and then absent, swallowed back into the forest that produced them. Bigfoot watches the direction they left for a long moment, but he does not follow. And then the fifth bear doesn't charge. This one is doing neither. It appears in the tree line, and it's pacing a lateral line at the edge of the tree cover, maybe 50 yards out, moving left and right, not fleeing, not committing. It was just waiting. Then it vocalizes. Short, sharp bursts, 2 or 3 in quick succession, then a pause, then again. I've spent 11 years learning bear vocalizations, and this one doesn't slot cleanly into anything I know. The bear keeps calling. 30 seconds, maybe 40, and then the tree line moves in 2 distinct places simultaneously, separated by 30 feet of brush, each disturbance carrying the specific weight of something large, moving through dense cover with purpose rather than panic. 2 bears step out of the timber and stop. They don't advance. They position themselves at the edge of engagement range, heads low. They were called in. I am almost certain of it. Bigfoot registers all 3 simultaneously. The slow perimeter scanning I'd been watching sharpens. The head stops moving in arcs and begins tracking points, snapping between positions with a speed and precision that is qualitatively different from before. No single target, 3 targets, plus whatever else is moving in the brush I can't see from my position on the slope. For the first time since I came down this hill, Bigfoot's posture carries something I haven't seen in it before. It was an awareness of a problem. They're just standing there, watching, and the quality of their stillness is the most unsettling thing I've witnessed yet. They're waiting for something, and I don't know what. Then they move without a signal I can identify. No vocalization, no charged telegraph, no single animal breaking first in a way that triggers the others. One moment, the 3 bears are holding their positions in a loose triangle around Bigfoot's location, roughly 20 to 30 feet of open ground between each of them and the center. And the next moment, the triangle is contracting, all 3 animals closing simultaneously. Bigfoot pivots to track all 3. The central position Bigfoot has held throughout this encounter, the high ground, the funneling terrain, the controlled geometry, is suddenly a liability. I watch Bigfoot turn and turn again, and I note for the first time a quality in the movement that I can only describe as calculation under pressure. Not panic, but something that recognizes a problem and is working through it in real time. One bear feints from the front. It's a fast, shallow lunge, closing 5 feet, then planting, just enough commitment to demand a response, not enough to constitute a real charge. Bigfoot tracks it, and in the tracking, the left flank opens. The second bear was already moving before the feint landed, closing from the side in a low, fast approach that covers the ground between them in under 2 seconds. Bigfoot intercepts it, a forceful, two-handed contact that stops the bear's momentum and drives it backward hard enough to lift its front feet briefly off the ground. The third bear hits during the opening. It's not a full, clean strike, glancing contact across Bigfoot's right side, more momentum than precision, but it connects, and Bigfoot's response is a half-step left that is not chosen. The footage is unambiguous about this. That half-step is absorbed force, not repositioning. Bigfoot recovers in under a second, stance re-establishing, weight recentering, but the half-step happened, and all 3 bears appear to register it the way predators register blood in water. The charges stop resetting. That's what changes the character of the engagement completely. Before, each bear had attacked and recovered, and circled before committing again. Discrete events with space between them. Now there is no space. One bear is still processing its repulsion, while the next is already inside engagement range, and Bigfoot is forced to address the new threat before the previous one has fully resolved. The terrain Bigfoot chose earlier, the funneling gap, the root-broken approach corridor, is no longer relevant. The triangle has collapsed it entirely. I watch Bigfoot reposition 3 times in under 30 seconds. Each repositioning is still controlled, still purposeful, but the ground being covered is reactive ground now, not chosen ground. Bigfoot is no longer dictating the geometry of this fight, and the bears are just getting started. The tree line fractures in multiple places at once. Not one entry point, not 2. I count 4 separate disturbances in the brush before I stop counting, because the branches are still moving and the number keeps changing, and somewhere behind the timber there is a volume of displacement that my brain keeps trying to reframe as something other than what it is. I retreat uphill without deciding to, my boots finding the slope automatically, while my hands keep the camera locked on the gully below, and I watch 5 more bears emerge from the forest in a staggered sequence. The perimeter around Bigfoot, which had been a triangle of 3, becomes something wider and less defined. I count 8 bears, 8 living bears in a single gully, oriented on a single point. The new arrivals don't replicate the cautious entry behavior of the 4th bear, the lateral pacing, the alert calling, the careful distance management. They establish positions, and they hold them for perhaps 10 seconds, and then the charges begin again, and what was already relentless becomes something that language starts to fail around. Overlapping. The charges are overlapping now, one bear cycling in as another cycles out, the pressure continuous in a way that allows no recovery window, no moment of stillness in which Bigfoot can reassert control of the pace. I watch Bigfoot strike one bear back and turn immediately into the approach of another, turn again into a third, the movement becoming increasingly reactive, increasingly defined by what's coming rather than what's intended. This is the moment I understand that the situation is no longer survivable for anything involved, not for the bears. The mathematics of that have been apparent since the first engagement, but not necessarily for Bigfoot either. 8 animals, relentless and overlapping, carrying a collective weight and momentum that no single physical capability can fully offset forever. Endurance is a resource. Force is a resource. I have watched Bigfoot spend both with extraordinary efficiency, and efficiency has limits, and the gully below me is currently home to 8 animals that are not operating on efficiency at all. They are operating on something older and simpler. They are operating on numbers. And as if it couldn't get any worse, 4 more bears enter the gully. The ring around Bigfoot is no longer a ring. It's a density. Bigfoot is no longer dictating anything. Bigfoot is absorbing pressure from all sides simultaneously, and the responses, while still extraordinary by any measure I have available, are reactive in a way they have never been before. Bigfoot forces an opening through one side of the press, a sustained drive through 2 bears at once, using combined mass as a wedge, creating a momentary gap in the ring. I watch it work. I watch Bigfoot push through and re-establish for approximately 4 seconds before the gap fills and the pressure reconstitutes from every remaining direction. 4 seconds. That's the breathing room available now. 4 seconds purchased at the cost of a full commitment that leaves the back exposed, and the bears have learned, or something has driven them toward, the behavior of targeting that exposure. The repeated impacts begin to accumulate visibly. Then Bigfoot goes to one knee. The left knee contacts the ground, and I feel something lurch in my chest. It lasts less than a second. Bigfoot is upright again before the bears nearest to the position can capitalize on it. Below me, 12 bears press inward, and Bigfoot stands in the middle of them, and the late light falls through the canopy onto a scene that has no precedent in anything I was trained for, anything I read, anything I believed was possible in these forests or any forests. Bigfoot backs into the timber. The fallen timber at the gully's western edge, a cluster of downed logs, some partially decomposed, one substantially intact, has been in my peripheral awareness since I first came down the slope. The intact log is approximately 10 to 12 feet long and perhaps 10 inches through at its widest point. Bigfoot gets both hands under it and lifts it in a single motion that takes perhaps a second from contact to full elevation. The first sweeping arc clears 8 feet of ground in front of Bigfoot and catches nothing because the bears at the leading edge scatter backward before contact. I watch it happen, and I understand immediately what Bigfoot understands. This is not a precision weapon, not something designed to strike and damage individual targets. It creates space. The bears hesitate. Not all of them, and not for long, but the hesitation is real and visible, and the first clear disruption in their pressure since the reinforcement wave arrived. The animals at the outer edge of the ring stop their lateral cycling and hold position, reassessing. 2 bears that had been closing from the left flank pull back to engagement distance and stay there, heads swinging, recalculating an approach against a target that has just changed its effective reach by 10 feet in either direction. I have watched bears adapt to changing conditions throughout this encounter with a flexibility that has repeatedly surprised me. This one surprises them back. Bigfoot swings again, not at a bear, but at the ground between 2 approaching animals, a downward strike that hits the soil with enough force to send debris outward across both their paths simultaneously. Both bears break off. One circles wider, one stops entirely, dropping into a low posture that reads as reluctance rather than preparation. It is the first time since the 4th bear entered this gully that I have watched a bear decide not to proceed. The log strikes continue in that pattern, not precise, not targeted, but rhythmic and purposeful. Ground strikes to create debris disruption, lateral sweeps to reset the nearest animals, occasional upward arcs that do nothing but remind everything within range of the object's dimensions. Bigfoot is not trying to win with the log. Bigfoot is trying to breathe, trying to buy the seconds between engagements that the bear's overlapping charges had eliminated, trying to reintroduce a recovery interval into a fight that had ceased to offer any. It works partially. Some bears disengage and widen their orbit, unwilling to close inside the sweep radius. Others adapt faster, darting in during the recovery phase after a swing, when the log's momentum is redirected and the window before the next arc is longest. I watched 2 bears make successful probing contacts during these windows. Neither lands with the commitment of a full charge, but both land, and I watch Bigfoot absorb each one and keep the log moving. The 12 bear density, which had collapsed every spatial advantage Bigfoot previously established, is no longer operating at full compression. There is a ring again, loose, probing, still dangerous in its numbers, but a ring with a radius rather than a wall. Bigfoot stands at its center, the log moving in slow arcs, chest heaving in a way it hasn't heaved before, and I watch and I document and I try to calculate how long this adaptation can hold against the arithmetic of what surrounds it. The bears at the outer edge are still circling. The ones that adapted to the window timing are still probing. And behind the tree line, just visible as shifted shadows in the dimming light, I can see movement that has not yet resolved into anything I can count. The forest is not finished sending bears. One bear, a large male on the northern edge of the ring, the one that's been most consistent about probing the post-swing windows, begins closing earlier in the recovery phase, shaving time off the interval it had previously respected. It reaches Bigfoot once before being pushed back, a sustained contact lasting 2 full seconds before Bigfoot generates the force to disengage it. The large male tries again. This time it holds the contact for closer to 3 seconds, driving forward with continuous pressure before Bigfoot redirects it. The redirection works, but the force behind the redirection is visibly reduced from what it would have been an hour ago. The bear lands 6 feet away instead of 12. It shakes its head, reorients, and does not retreat to the outer ring. It holds its position at mid-distance, close enough that the next attempt requires less committed acceleration, and it waits with the specific patience of an animal that has just learned something useful. The log sweeps slow further. Below me, the large male makes its third approach. This time, Bigfoot doesn't redirect it. Bigfoot absorbs the contact, plants, and pushes. The bear gives ground. Bigfoot holds position, but the log drops during the exchange. I'm Caleb Harlan, and my back is pressed hard against the trunk of a Douglas fir, legs on fire, lungs trying to remember what a normal breathing rhythm feels like. The canopy above me is so thick it swallows midday whole and spits it out as something closer to late dusk. Everything down here tinted in a deep, layered green-black, like the light itself has been strained through a dozen overlapping membranes of shadow before it reaches the forest floor. I have been running. I can't tell you exactly how long. Long enough that my thighs are burning and my chest feels like it's being wrung out by hand. Long enough that the muscles in my calves have progressed from burning to a deeper, duller protest that I know from experience means the reserves are nearly gone. I am being observed by something that is close. I look down at the forest floor almost involuntarily, half expecting to catch movement at ground level. Some animal, something recognizable, something that fits into a category I have names for. I am still looking down when the world directly above me comes completely apart. The scream arrives before anything else does. Sudden, explosive, zero windup, detonating right overhead with no warning at all, like someone took the upper register of a woman's scream and ran it through a distortion pedal until the signal tore itself into metallic shreds. It lasts half a second, maybe less. In that half second, I have not looked up, have not processed what I'm hearing, am still somewhere between flinching and freezing, still stuck in the gap between stimulus and response. And then Bigfoot drops. I don't mean it jumped down, I mean it fell. Intentionally. Purposefully, limbs drawn in tight against its body, torso angled like something that has done this before and knows exactly how to bring the weight down. Straight out of the canopy and straight toward the exact patch of ground where I had been sitting not half a second before. Bigfoot hits with an impact I feel in my back teeth. Dirt erupts. Pine needles blast outward in a ring 3 feet wide. Its hands, and I say hands, but what I mean are weapons, broad and thick-fingered with nails that are closer to claws than anything else, rake deep parallel grooves into the soil on landing, 4 inches deep at least, and those grooves stop maybe 3 inches from the front of my left boot. 3 inches? I am already scrambling backward on my hands and the heels of my feet before my brain has issued a single coherent instruction. I'm just moving, backward and sideways, across uneven root-laced ground, not looking where I'm going, not caring. The Sasquatch in front of me is 500 pounds at minimum. My brain is doing this assessment in real time with the dispassionate accuracy of pure adrenaline, and it is covered in dense, dark brown-black fur, matted with bark debris and fir needles, and its face is broad and brutally flat, and its eyes have found me with a focus that contains absolutely no ambiguity. Can I put enough distance between us before it decides I'm the target? Bigfoot does not pause, does not square up, does not vocalize again, does not perform any of the threat display behavior that gets discussed in the second-hand accounts. It simply moves, and the movement is already carrying a weapon. Something is in its right hand, a broken tree limb, maybe 4 feet long, cross-section as thick as my forearm. And I genuinely cannot tell you whether it grabbed that limb off the ground on landing or had it coming down from the canopy. The timeline doesn't allow for either, but both seem to have happened. Bigfoot raises the limb overhead with both hands, full extension above its head, and brings it straight down at my skull. This is not a warning. There is no arc to the swing, no feint, no hesitation in the mechanics, just a direct vertical overhead strike aimed with unambiguous intention to end the situation with one hit. I see the full body mechanics of it in a compressed fragment of a second. The hips rotating, the shoulders driving down, the entire mass behind the motion. I throw myself sideways, and the club hits the earth where my head was with a crack that I feel as much as here. It splits the soil. It snaps off smaller embedded branches underneath it, like dry sticks. My shoulder hits a root cluster, and something grinds in a way that I file away to worry about later, and I'm already pulling my legs under me, already scanning, already looking for anything I can use. Is there even a place left to hide, or have I run out of options? That's when I see the gap. 2 fallen logs, old ones, half rotted and gray, crossed at a low angle to my left, maybe 8 feet away. Between them, there's a crevice, barely wider than my shoulders, maybe 16 inches at the widest point, less than that where the bark is still on. I do not weigh my options. I do not have time to weigh my options. I move. I hit that gap at speed, and I drive myself into it headfirst, scraping both sides of my ribcage simultaneously, feeling fabric shred and then skin shred underneath it. And I wedge in deep enough that my chest is genuinely compressed between the logs, and I have to take short, deliberate half-breaths instead of full ones. My face ends up maybe 6 inches from the outer edge of the opening. My boots are behind me, heels probably visible from outside. I press in as deep as the space allows, and I go completely still. Will this cramped refuge hold, or is it just a trap waiting to snap? Bigfoot reaches me in seconds. It does not slow down or hesitate or try to understand what I've done. It lunges directly at the gap, both arms driving in at full extension, and those arms are enormous, not proportional to any primate I have a reference point for, built like load-bearing structural columns, and they wedge hard at the shoulders before they can reach me. I can hear the logs groan under the lateral pressure. Bigfoot's fingers are inside the gap anyway, all of them searching, and they are clawing through the air maybe 4 or 5 inches from my face. The nails leave visible tracks across the rotted wood and packed soil. I pull my head back as far as the confined space allows, straining my neck, trying to find 1 more inch of clearance that isn't there. I do not make a sound. There is a pause. Not retreat, not withdrawal, just recalculation. And then the tactics shift, and the assault on the logs themselves begins. Bigfoot stops trying to reach through the gap and starts trying to remove the barrier. It bites into the upper log, and I want to be precise about what I mean when I say that not gnawing, not exploratory contact, but a full deliberate bite applied with the intent to remove material. Wood fibers snap, chunks of rotted log come away. I can hear the specific sound of it, fibrous and wet, the way compromised wood sounds when it fails under direct force. Between bites, it uses the club, hammering down on top of the log structure with both hands, and each impact travels through the logs and into my back and spine like a shockwave, and each impact sends debris down into the crevice. Splinters, bark fragments, loose soil, all of it falling into my face and eyes, and I cannot move enough to clear any of it. My left eye is partially crusted. The smell inside the crevice is overwhelming. Rot and wet soil and sap and something else, something animal and hot and immediate that doesn't fit any category I have, but that every part of my body is reading as a threat signal. The logs are not collapsing, not yet, but material is being removed with every pass, and the timeline on that math is not favorable. Then the second scream comes in from somewhere to my left, and everything changes. Is it help or just more chaos about to land on me? Different pitch, slightly higher, slightly more fractured at the peak, but carrying the same absolute violence, the same total lack of preamble. A second Bigfoot hits the ground, maybe 25 feet from my position, not from as high as the first one dropped, but fast and low, and moving before it has fully landed. It doesn't waste a single beat before covering the distance toward the first one, and the first Bigfoot, mid-swing on the logs, mid-assault on my position, spins on it with an immediacy that tells me exactly how much thought went into abandoning the attack on me. 0. The calculation took no time because there was no calculation. Are they turning on each other before I even get a chance to escape? The two Bigfoot collide a second later. Not gradually, not with a closing approach, just full mass impact at speed, 2 enormous bodies trying to occupy the same point in space. The sound is percussive and deep, and I feel the ground move through the logs and through my compressed ribcage. There is no circling, there is no posturing or display. The fight opens at full intensity in the first second and does not step down from there. I am wedged inside a rotting log in the dark, splinters embedding themselves in both eyes and cutting small lines of blood across my eyelids, watching two Bigfoot tear into each other not 30 feet from my face. I can hear their breathing, deep, guttural, ragged bursts, smell the musky heat of their fur, the earthy tang of upturned soil and snapped wood. Every movement sends vibrations through the log I am wedged in, but I do not shift, do not adjust more than necessary to maintain position. My chest tightens instinctively, and I do not breathe through my mouth for fear of even the faintest sound. I do not move anything. I do not absolutely have to move. Every nerve is taut. Every muscle is ready. I am trying, almost superstitiously, to become part of the log, to merge with the wood, the rot, the earth around me, to occupy no space of my own, to vanish from the awareness of the creatures tearing the forest apart mere yards away. The fight does not pause. The two Bigfoot crash into a fallen sapling and send it snapping like a dry whip. One shoves the other backward into a cluster of ferns and moss, sending debris flying in all directions. Their arms lash outward, catching on each other's torsos, slamming into tree trunks, and rolling over exposed roots. Every hit sends a jolt through the ground, through the logs, through me. Their massive bodies crush small shrubs underfoot, scatter loose rock, and churn the forest floor into dark, uneven furrows. I track every movement through narrow gaps in the rotting log, catching glimpses of fur, arms, shoulders, faces contorted in violent exertion, teeth bared, claws extended. I am pinned, yet hyper-aware. Every second stretches long enough to feel the air vibrate from each impact. If one of them shifts attention even slightly, if their gaze flickers toward me, I know in an instant that my survival depends on absolute stillness. The chaos escalates further. One Bigfoot swings both arms in a coordinated shove, almost imperceptibly timed, and the other braces, legs wide, muscles coiled. Momentum carries both forward, colliding with a nearby trunk, bark shearing under the weight of massive bodies. Branches splinter above me, needles rain down, and the log I occupy vibrates with the shock. I am pressed tighter into the decay, heart hammering, every sense screaming the same urgent warning. Do not move, do not breathe, do not exist in a way they can detect. The fight's volume, its physical presence, fills every inch of the forest within 20 feet. The air dense with the scent of disturbed earth, the metallic tang of dirt and bark, the animal musk of exertion. And yet I remain utterly still, an extension of the rotting wood, invisible by sheer force of stillness and terror. And then the third Sasquatch arrives before I have time to process the second one. Is this the end, or does the chaos work in my favor? I hear it first, a crash through lower canopy 20 feet up. The sound of something massive simply displacing material rather than navigating around it, branches giving way under weight and force, and then it hits the ground with an impact that reorganizes the local topography in a way that is not metaphorical. I can see it through the gaps between the logs, larger than the other two, or at least that's how it registers in the chaos, and louder, and moving with a weight that makes the previous two look like a preamble. Now all three of them are in the same 30-foot radius, and the energy in that space shifts into something that has no accurate name. They vocalize at each other, not sustained roars, nothing theatrical, but short detonating screams and guttural burst sounds, fast and overlapping. And they do this while pressing into each other's space aggressively, bodies almost touching, volume escalating. And this argument, this exchange, this whatever it is, lasts maybe 4 seconds before the whole thing pivots into the most violent sustained physical encounter I have ever been present for in my life. Can I stay hidden while the epicenter of destruction unfolds so close? One Bigfoot grabs another by both shoulders, full grip, fingers visibly sinking into fur and flesh, and drives it backward into a tree trunk. The tree is probably 20 inches across, and it shudders on impact. I hear the wood stress. Branches shake loose from 30 or 40 feet up and fall through the canopy. Bigfoot that got driven into the trunk bounces off and delivers a full-arm lateral blow immediately. No recovery time, aimed at the ribs and connecting with the sound that carries. The third. Bigfoot enters the exchange from the side with a broken limb it's using as a weapon, sweeping it across the back of the nearest one, and then the biting starts. Constant, purposeful, targeted biting, not panic, not defensive, aimed at shoulders, the back of the neck, the upper arms, anywhere a grip can be established and a hold can be built or material can be pulled away. Dark blood begins to appear in the fur, and not in small amounts. It soaks in and mats the fur, and catches what little light reaches the forest floor, and looks nearly black. The smell of it reaches me inside the crevice. It is copper and iron, and something rawer underneath that. One Bigfoot gets partially lifted, not fully off the ground, but a hip and shoulder maneuver gets its feet clear for a moment, and it gets thrown laterally. It lands on its side, and the impact churns the forest floor, exposes root systems that have been underground for decades, sends a spray of dark soil and shattered ground. Cover in a wide radius. It is upright before I have finished registering that it went down. The area between the three of them is being systematically destroyed. Soil churned into loose, dark earth, roots exposed and snapped, bark stripped from 3 or 4 nearby trunks where bodies have been pressed or thrown, fir needles scattered across a 20-foot radius until the ground underneath is bare. One Bigfoot gets the second one down to a knee and goes for the throat with both hands, fingers clamping, and holds it for maybe 2 seconds before the third drags it backward by the fur of its shoulders and the grip breaks. The sequence resets. They start again. The intensity does not decrease between iterations. It climbs. How much destruction can the forest endure before the chaos reaches me? I am watching all of this through gaps in the logs. The gaps are inches from my face. I am not moving. I am not making a sound. I am absolutely and completely aware that if any one of the 3 of them shifts their attention toward my position even briefly, everything changes immediately, and in ways I don't survive. One of Bigfoot takes a simultaneous 2-handed shove from both of the others and goes backward, directly into my log cover. The impact is a different category of event. The entire structure torques violently. One of the main logs, the upper one, the one that has been taking the club strikes, cracks along a fault line it probably developed years ago and has been waiting for an excuse to use. The crevice widens. Light cuts in from the left side where the crack is opened. Actual exterior light, gray-green and cold, and the tight compression that has been holding me in place disappears. My rib cage has room, my left arm has movement. Splinters rain down into my face from the split log. Another log shifts under me, and the whole geometry of the shelter changes in under a second. The gap that I squeezed into is now visible from outside, from ground level, from the right angle, from directly in front of where the crack opened. You can see into the crevice. You can see my face. You can see me. Will the moment they discover me end everything? One of the Bigfoot sees me. Its head snaps toward the opening with a speed and precision that does not fit anything that size. No tracking lag, no gradual focus, just an instantaneous directional lock, head turning and stopping on my position as if on a pivot. Its eyes find mine through the gap. This is direct, unmistakable eye contact, and it lasts a full second, maybe slightly longer, which in this context is long enough to be geological. I have spent a lot of time in the field. I have had plenty of moments of ambiguity, wondering if I was being watched, wondering if an animal had detected me or was simply looking in my direction by coincidence. This is not one of those moments. This is the opposite of ambiguity. It sees me. It knows what I am. The decision has already been made before the eye contact ends. It disengages from the other two. It takes less than a second, and Bigfoot comes for the gap. Do I have the speed and wits to survive this direct assault? I come out of the logs the only way available, forward, fast, not standing up so much as exploding outward and converting the momentum of the exit directly into a running stride without any pause in between. There is no direction I have planned. There is no destination in my head. There is a downhill slope in front of me and dense timber, and I take the densest available line at full speed, because dense means narrower gaps, and narrower gaps mean something with that body width has to decelerate to navigate them. Roots cross the ground in every direction, and I hit them at different angles with both feet and stumble twice, and correct without reducing pace. Low branches hit my face and my chest. Something catches my left arm above the elbow and opens the skin, and I feel the heat of it. but not the pain yet. That comes later. Behind me, all 3 Bigfoot are in pursuit. I know this because I can hear them, and the hearing is not ambiguous. Heavy, fast footfalls that communicate through the ground as much as the air. And the sound of 3 animals that size moving at speed through dense timber is a physical phenomenon, something your sternum picks up before your ears fully process it. They are not trying to be quiet. They are not pacing themselves. They are coming. These Bigfoot are faster than me on open ground. I already know this from the way the first one dropped. That kind of power doesn't slow down on flat terrain, but I am not giving them open ground. I am threading between trees with gaps that make me slow down less than something twice my shoulder width, cutting angles through tight channels between root clusters and low branches, staying in the timber where my size is a relative advantage. Every narrow gap buys me fractions of a second compound. That is the math I am running in the back of my head, while the front of my head is entirely occupied with not dying. Are these fractions of a second enough to keep me ahead? The sound behind me is constant, and it is organized, and it is gaining. 3 sets of footfalls, each one heavy enough to resonate, and between them, the occasional crash of a branch being taken out rather than ducked, the occasional grunt of something large navigating an obstacle at speed. They communicate while they run, short, clipped vocalizations, nothing I can parse but clearly purposeful, and the fact that they are coordinating while pursuing me is a piece of information I do not have time to sit with, but that lands in my chest with real weight. I cut left hard around a tight cluster of 3 trees, and the gap between the last 2 is maybe 18 inches, and I turn my shoulders and scrape through, and I hear the closest set of footfalls adjust. Not stop, adjust, finding another line. Around the outside, I hear one of them hit something solid behind me, a trunk, a root cluster, something fixed, and the sound of impact is significant, and the footfall pattern changes after it. 1 set of heavy steps drops out of the rhythm. 2 Bigfoot continue. I don't celebrate and I don't adjust. I keep going. Is survival now about endurance, luck, or both? One of the Bigfoot screams, and it is close. Not 40 feet back, maybe 15, maybe closer. The sound is directional, and it is aimed at me, and it is close enough that I can hear the texture of it, the way the pitch breaks and shreds at the top end. I push harder. My legs are past the point of fine motor reliability, and I am operating on the crude version. Swing and land and push and repeat, hoping the ground keeps cooperating, hoping the next root cluster is passable, hoping the gap between the next 2 trees is wide enough. The timber is beginning to space out. I can see more light ahead. The ground is getting less technical, less obstructed, and that is a mixed development. Better footing for me, but fewer tight gaps to use as speed differentials. I take what the terrain is giving me, and I run. A crash behind me, different from footfalls, different from a collision with a tree. This is the sound of a large mass going lateral, losing its feet, going down. Heavy and sudden, and followed by a few seconds of thrashing, and then the footfall pattern behind me drops to 1 set, then less than 1 set, then staggered and inconsistent. Branches snap behind me once, twice, then silence. Not fading, not trailing off into the distance. Gone. I break into an open stretch. Real light, sparse trees, the feel of the dense forest releasing me into something less compressed. The sounds behind me are absent. Not fading, absent. I do not turn around. I do not slow down to evaluate. I run until my legs simply cannot sustain the pace any longer, and then I collapse into a walk that is barely more organized than falling forward 1 step at a time. I never look back. That felt like the right call at the moment, and it still does. Whatever was moving in those trees, whatever that 3-body collision of something ancient and enormous and categorically indifferent to my presence actually constituted, it stayed in the timber. I made it out with a torn jacket, a gash above the left elbow that needed to be closed, a shoulder that went purple-green over the following 2 days, and a left eye that was partially crusted shut from debris for the better part of an evening. I made it out, and the forest behind me, when I finally stopped moving and stood still enough to listen, was completely and perfectly silent. The bear was already too close when I heard it. Not the crashing sound people imagine. No snapping branches, no warning. Just the sudden wrongness of something large occupying space that had been empty a breath before. 500 pounds, maybe 6, moving through a second-growth spruce with a quietness that shouldn't have been possible for that size. I had the .338 up before my mind caught up to what my hands were doing. 8 years in this corridor. You don't think about the rifle, your hands just know. I want to back up because the morning doesn't start there. The morning starts in the dark before first light, when I crossed into the lower corridor and the temperature dropped the way it does when you move from open hillside into old timber. Not a weather change, a different world. I've made that crossing dozens of times. I know how to walk it without sound, heel to toe, weight transfer smooth. By the time I'm in the corridor in the dark, I'm not thinking anymore. I'm listening. I was hunting alone. That matters to everything that follows. Not because hunting alone in grizzly country is reckless, I've done it my entire adult life, but because alone means the record of the morning is entirely mine. No one else standing 30 meters away with a different angle. The record is what I experienced, and I've had to spend a lot of time since September deciding how much confidence to place in the recording instrument, which is me. I know this corridor. That's the honest beginning. I know where the creek bends south around the granite outcropping and where the game trail intersects the bench drainage. I know the sound the water makes when it goes over the flat rock at the ford, lower in September than August, a different note. And I know the old growth on the south side runs about 200 meters before the density drops enough that visibility opens to 40, 50 meters in good light. 8 years is long enough to know a piece of country the way you know a house you grew up in. The kind of knowing that isn't conscious, that lives in the body and expresses itself as rightness or wrongness before thought arrives to explain it. The first indication that the morning was different came at 6:58. Though I didn't know the time. I don't carry a watch in the field. The sound came from my northeast, maybe 60 meters, and it wasn't something I had a category for. Low, percussive. Not the sound of a tree falling, which I know well. That has a progression to it, a creak, and then a rush, and then the strike, and not a rockfall, which in this terrain would come from above and to the south anyway. This was a single contact, something brought down against earth. Deliberate, the way a thing announces itself. I stopped. Went still the way you go still when the information is incomplete and you need to buy time for more. Whatever it was, didn't repeat. The drainage went back to its own quiet, and I stood there for a full minute, maybe more, trying to place it in a category that made sense for this country. Bear knocking over a standing dead? Possible. Possible, but not quite right. I've heard that, and there's usually secondary sound. The roll of wood on ground, the scattering. This was clean, one impact and silence. I filed it and kept moving because the light was coming, and the elk don't hold position past legal light when the pressure's on. I moved northeast along the main game trail. The corridor was doing its morning thing, the gradual emergence of detail as gray became color, the shapes separating from the dark. I was thinking about elk, about the approach angle from the south side and whether the wind would hold. I was not thinking about what had made the sound at 6:58. The bear was at 30 meters when I first registered it, maybe 35. Moving through the second growth spruce on a line that would intersect mine in about the time it takes to draw a breath. The quietness of it was what stopped me first. That wrongness, that sense of displacement, the feeling of scale where scale shouldn't be. Then I processed what I was seeing, and the rifle came up. Bear 4, though I didn't have a name for it then. Just a mature male, close enough that I could see the silver tipping on its shoulders and the mass of the head and the way it moved with a low-slung power that elk don't have and deer don't have, a different kind of weight, the weight of something that has no serious predator in this ecosystem and knows it at a cellular level. Its nose was working constantly, that side-to-side movement, reading the air, compiling information I couldn't access. It was angled slightly away from me, which meant it hadn't fully fixed on my position yet. The wind was southeast to northwest. I was upwind. In about 3 more seconds, it was going to know exactly where I was. It didn't charge. That was the first wrong thing. A grizzly that close, surprised, usually commits. The decision happens fast, and there's a shape to it. The lowered head, the ears, the bladed stance that shifts weight forward. I've had 2 encounters at distance that went to the charge, one when I was guiding a client and put myself between him and a sow with cubs, and both times the bear's body language telegraphed the decision before the charge began. This bear did none of that. It stopped. It looked at me, not the wild swinging look of a surprised animal, but something more deliberate, a fixed assessment, the way an animal looks at something when it's running a calculation rather than reacting to stimulus. And then it made a sound I had never heard a bear make before. Low, pulsing, not the teeth-popping bluster of an agitated bear, not the woofing exhalation of a threat display. Uncertain, thick with something I don't have a word for except to say it sounded like the noise a very large and very confident animal makes when it encounters something that unsettles its confidence. Then it turned, not away from me, away from the trees to my northeast. I was so focused on tracking the bear's retreat that I almost missed what it was retreating from. The bear moved northwest at a pace that wasn't quite panic, but wasn't the unhurried amble of a bear going about its business. Directional, the way an animal moves when an assessment has produced a clear instruction. It registered as scale first. I don't know how else to say it. The eye catches proportion before the brain has vocabulary for proportion. In the tree line to my northeast, where the morning light hadn't fully penetrated the timber, there was a shape that was wrong. Not wrong the way a shape is wrong when it's ambiguous, when you can't tell if it's a stump or a standing deer or a boulder you hadn't accounted for. Wrong the way a shape is wrong when you can see it clearly and what you see doesn't fit. Upright, still, wide at the shoulder in a way that had no referent in my experience of this drainage or this terrain type, or, I realized slowly, and with a sensation I'm still not able to name accurately, any terrain I'd ever hunted in the previous 8 years. It was watching the bear leave. I know what I was looking at. I know the word for it, Bigfoot. Then it turned and looked at me. What I experienced in that moment was not terror, not the animal terror of the bear encounter, which is physical and fast and operates below language. This was something else, something that had more room in it. The way it looked at me did not feel like being registered by an animal. It felt like being considered. The difference between a thing looking toward you because you're a stimulus and a thing looking at you because it is deciding something. I started moving west before I decided to. My legs made the call. What I remember from the first 100 meters is almost nothing, a kind of white noise where rational thought used to be, my body running a program my mind hadn't written. I know I was moving fast. I know the rifle was in my right hand and the muzzle was down, which is wrong in the mechanical sense and right in every other sense, because I was covering ground, and a shouldered rifle costs ground. When I came back to something like conscious awareness, I was already past the second camera post and heading for the main game trail that runs west toward the ford. And I knew I was moving fast because the country was sliding past faster than it usually does when I'm in it, familiar landmarks arriving before I expected them. I made myself look back. Once, it was following, not running, not rushing. The stride was long and even, each step covering ground that would have taken me 2 steps, maybe 3, and the pace had the quality of something that doesn't experience terrain as a problem to solve, as if the ground beneath it was simply cooperating. The head was level, not bobbing the way a running animal's head bobs, and the arms, and this is where my mind snagged and kept snagging for the rest of the run, the arms were close to the body, hands still, not swinging the way arms swing when you're moving fast, just there. The whole figure was composed in a way that had nothing urgent about it, despite the fact that it was closing ground. It was not interested in the bear. I understood that with a clarity that arrived fully formed, bypassing the usual process of construction. The bear had moved through this drainage ahead of whatever this was, registering scent, flushing cover, and once it had located me, once the finding was complete, it had been allowed to leave. Because the finding was what it had been useful for, and the finding was done. Now the bear was gone. I was the only thing left in this corridor, and it was still coming. I ran the ford without slowing, 8 inches of moving water. Cold enough in late September that I should have felt it, and I didn't feel it. Just the impact of the far bank's gravel against my boot, the scramble up the mud at the edge, the tree line closing around me on the west side. My lungs were burning by then. I'd been moving hard for close to 20 minutes through elevation, and the debt was accumulating in my legs and lungs in ways I was aware of and couldn't do anything about. Respiratory debt in the mountains has a shape to it. There's a point where the available pace starts declining, and there's nothing to be done except accept the new ceiling. And I could feel that ceiling approaching. The figure behind me was not experiencing a ceiling. It had no ceiling I could detect. The stride I'd seen in that single backward glance covered ground faster than I was covering it. not the explosive gap-closing rush of a bear in a bluff charge, but steadily faster, a pace that didn't seem to require anything from the body producing it. The choke point was the only play I had left. I knew this terrain. I knew the choke point from 3 seasons of hunting the corridor, a place where the valley narrows between the rock face and the creek, where the drainage floor compresses to 30 meters before opening again below the high bench. There was a natural defensive position at the east side of the gap, a rock face that would put stone at my back, and from that position you could see the full narrow section of the drainage for 50, 60 meters, which in .338 terms is close range, not far enough to feel comfortable, but close enough that the round does everything it was designed to do. I changed direction, angled north toward the choke point, adding time to my route, but adding what I needed more than time: stone at my back, a clear sight line. The crossing took me through blowdown from 2 winters back, old spruce creating a grid I had to climb over and under. I lost 30 seconds to it. I don't know what happened to the gap during those 30 seconds because I didn't look back. I reached the choke point at the rock face and put my back against the stone and turned. The drainage corridor was empty, 40 meters of narrow valley floor, creek on the left, rock face on my right, the timber at the far end where the spruce closed in and the sight line ended. Nothing moving. The sound of the creek over its stones, normal, unchanged. My own breathing, which was not normal and not unchanged. I was pulling air in the way you pull it after a hard mountain run, the chest expanding fully, the exhalation too short, the whole system running in deficit. I gave it 30 seconds and made myself slow the breath down because a controlled respiratory rate is a controlled trigger pull, and I was going to need the trigger pull to be controlled. I knew this terrain. Narrow gap, rock face on the east side, clear sight line back down the drainage. High ground in the relative sense. I was elevated maybe 3 meters above the drainage floor, which changes the geometry of a shot in ways that matter. The .338 was loaded. I'd been carrying 5 rounds in the magazine and 1 in the chamber through the whole morning, the standard field carry. 4,000 foot-pounds at the muzzle, a round designed for exactly the category of animal I might encounter here. Not designed for this, there is no caliber designed for this, but it was what I had, and I was using what I had. It came into view between 2 old spruce at the corridor's far end. I had spent the 20-minute run trying to rationalize what I'd seen in the tree line. Trick of light, bad angle, stress distorting scale. A bear standing on its hind legs looks wrong in the way upright bears always look wrong, and in partial light of a shadowed tree line, that explanation isn't ridiculous. It requires some contortion of the evidence, but it doesn't require you to accept something that reorganizes everything. Open ground in full morning light does not allow for those exits. What I saw was upright and bipedal and moving at the pace I had tracked during the run, that steady, patient, ground-eating pace that covered 9 feet per full stride. The head was level. The shoulders did not rotate the way shoulders rotate when a human walks fast. The arms hung in a way that had no human referent. Wrist height at mid-thigh, not swinging, close to the body, still in a way that the arms of a moving thing should not be still. And the proportions. The height I couldn't calculate exactly from that distance and that position, but I knew was wrong. Not wrong the way a tall man is wrong. Wrong the way a category error is wrong. Too high from the drainage floor, too wide across the shoulders, the wrong shape in the wrong place at a size that didn't connect to any animal I'd encountered in 8 years or 34 years of being alive in the outdoors. It was not running, it was walking toward me. What I was looking at had a name I had spent 20 minutes refusing to use. Bigfoot. I fired. The .338 is loud enough in a canyon that the first shot takes everything for a moment. Sound, vision, coherent thought, all of it replaced by the report bouncing off the rock face and the creek canyon until it's hard to locate yourself in the noise. When it came back, I was already chambering the second round, the bolt handled without conscious instruction. I found the target in the scope and fired again. Then I shifted my weight from right foot to left, a practiced adjustment for changing angle, and fired a third time. Nothing. That is the word for what happened, and it is not a sufficient word. No reaction, no stumbling, no change in gait, no flinching. The rounds went somewhere. I heard 2 strike earth behind and to the right, but the third I am certain was on target. I was aiming for center mass. The angle was up, which I registered distantly as information I didn't want. The middle of it was above my eye level from the rock face base, which required an upward angle to reach. 3 rounds, no observable effect. I kept firing because the act preserves the possibility the next round will matter. Every hunter who has ever raised a weapon at a dangerous animal knows this at a level that doesn't require articulation. You fire until something changes. The stopping, if it happens, is something that happens to you because the evidence against the possibility of the next round mattering becomes too large to continue past. 3 rounds. I stopped. There was a specific moment when I understood the 4th round was not going to change what the first 3 hadn't changed. That understanding arrived not as a conclusion I reasoned toward, but as something given, delivered whole. I stopped, and then I set the rifle down against the rock face. Not dropped it, set it, the butt-finding stone, the barrel leaning, deliberate as setting down a tool you've decided isn't the right tool for the job. It was a choice made under conditions where no choice should have been possible, and yet it was chosen, consciously, clearly. Then I turned to the rock scramble above me, and I climbed, both hands on granite, feet finding purchase in cracks and ledges I'd never scouted because I'd never conceived of needing them. The rock face above the choke point wasn't technical climbing in the formal sense, no rope required, no specialized equipment, but it was the kind of terrain where misjudging a foothold costs you everything, where you have to commit weight to a hold before you're sure it'll take the weight. I committed every hold. I didn't think about whether the holds would take me. I climbed because the alternative was standing at the base of the rock face with an empty rifle and whatever understanding I'd reached about the empty rifle's significance. The rifle stayed where I left it. I didn't look back. I have tried to explain this to people who ask about it, and the best I can offer is this. Looking back was not going to change what I'd find, and what I'd find was going to cost me what I couldn't afford to spend. The math of the climb required everything, full attention, full commitment of every limb and pound of body weight to the problem of the next hold. Dividing that attention was the same as failing the climb, and I had already made the decision somewhere in the sequence of those 3 rounds and the silence that followed them, that the climb was the only thing that mattered. I needed my hands. That's what I said later, and that's what I meant, and it contains everything it contains. The bench opened above the choke point, and I crossed it at a run, arms driving, legs past the point of pain, into something that doesn't have a name. 200 meters of open ground, bench grass at knee height in September, the far tree line a dark line at the edge of my vision. I crossed it the only way you can cross open ground, with a gap closing behind you, at maximum effort. I made the far tree line and went in without slowing. Deeper, northeast, into terrain that steepened and got technical fast. The granite formation started, broken country where roots have to be found rather than followed. I found the ledge by accident, northeast face of a formation not on any hunting access map, no reason for anyone to go there. A narrow ledge at a height that required technical scrambling to reach, with an overhang above that would cut the wind and the sightline from below. I climbed up and sat down against the rock wall and did not move. The temperature dropped the way it drops in the mountains in late September, fast once the sun angle changes. I had a day hunt's worth of gear, not gear for a night at elevation. I managed. I did not build a fire. I sat against the rock and listened to the drainage below and heard nothing that told me where it was or how far or whether it was still in the country at all. I stayed on the ledge through the night and into the following afternoon when the search team found me. The search team lead, a woman with 16 years running searches in grizzly country, looked at me the way medical professionals look at a patient whose chart has surprised them. She said I looked like I'd had a significant experience. She was not wrong. My statement that evening was incomplete, not dishonestly. I said what I could say, which was that I'd had a bear encounter at close range and made poor navigation decisions and ended up on the ledge. There is a way a mind protects itself in the immediate aftermath of something it hasn't finished processing by staying inside the available categories a little longer, deferring the revision until it becomes unavoidable. The revision became unavoidable over the following weeks as the details that had been blurred by stress sharpened into something I couldn't soften back down. The shape in the tree line, the pace, the stride, the 3 rounds and the silence after, the angle of the 3rd shot. The following June I went back to the drainage. No rifle. 3 days in the corridor with a notebook and an absence of agenda, not something I'm naturally suited to, having spent 8 years in this country organized around finding a specific animal. Going back without that structure felt like going back to a house I'd lived in and finding the furniture rearranged. The shapes were familiar and the orientation was wrong. On the 2nd morning, I found fresh tracks on the main game trail. That morning's prints, dew still in the grass at the trail margins, impressions clean and sharp, the kind of clarity you get from tracks made in the last few hours. Moving through the corridor in the same direction. I didn't need any analysis to recognize the length, the stride, the proportions my body had already cataloged on September 24th. I didn't follow them. I stood at the trail margin and looked at them for what must have been 2 minutes. Then I stepped back and walked 20 meters to a downed spruce and sat on the trunk at the trail's edge and waited. An hour, maybe a little more. The drainage did its late June morning things, light shifting through the canopy, the creek louder than September, birds working their routines. A doe at the seep crossing, 200 meters away. A juvenile hawk, working the open bench before drifting out of sight. Normal things. The things a drainage does when it's doing its own business. I saw nothing that explained the tracks. Eventually, I got up from the log and walked out. People ask me if I think something was watching during that hour. They ask it carefully, the way people ask things when they're not sure the question is allowed. I understand the carefulness. I practiced it myself for 8 months. I built careful language around the edges of what I knew because the careful language preserved the possibility of remaining inside the available categories. The categories where ordinary conversation happens and you can talk to people without watching them recalibrate their assessment of your reliability. I don't think it in the way you think about things that might be true. I know it the way I knew on September 24th what the situation required before my mind had completed the sentence. That kind of knowing lives somewhere below language and doesn't come up for debate because it isn't a thought. It's closer to a physical fact, like knowing where the ground is beneath your feet. You know it because you're in contact with it, and the contact is direct, and no amount of subsequent reasoning changes what the contact told you. I am still here. That is the foundational fact of everything that follows. I ran well. I shot well. I climbed well. None of those things are why I'm here. I'm here because of a decision made by something else about what the morning was going to produce at a point in the sequence when I had no remaining input into the outcome. 3 rounds from a .338 Winchester Magnum at close range in open terrain. Then I set the rifle down. Then I climbed, and it let me climb. The whole morning had a shape. The sound before dawn was the beginning of it. The bear encounter was the middle. The chase, the choke point, the 3 rounds were the body. The letting was part of the shape, not luck, not distraction. It happened because the morning arrived at a point where a decision was available and the decision was made. The bear was never the point. I understood that in the drainage, running, and I've understood it more completely in the months since. The bear moved through the corridor and found me the way a bear finds things, by covering ground, reading air. And once the finding was done, it was allowed to leave. And then the thing that had been using the bear's ranging for its own purposes moved openly through the corridor it had cleared. That sequence implies planning at a level I don't have a comfortable framework for. The difference between processing a situation and having already decided about the situation before it began. The bear left, and then, when the space was clear, what had been waiting for the space to be clear moved into it. Not because the bear's leaving was coincidental, because the bear's leaving was the signal. I've told the story in the third person to investigators and the search team. Cole Rutherford was found on the ledge. Cole Rutherford gave a statement. Cole Rutherford returned to the drainage the following June. The distance helps because what happened to Cole Rutherford on September 24th is something I am still in the process of becoming a person who experienced it, and the process is slow. What I think, and this is the most speculative thing I'll say, is that the hour on the log was permitted. That sitting there was something it knew about and chose not to interrupt, the way it chose on September 24th not to close the gap at the choke point. The not closing is a choice. The not interrupting is a choice. Choices imply a chooser with access to alternatives. I don't think I deserve to be let go, not as self-punishment, as a descriptive observation about the economy of the situation. I was in its corridor. I had a rifle. I fired the rifle. None of those merit grace, and yet the grace was extended, and I am here to account for it, and I find myself unable to settle the account because the debt keeps compounding the longer I look at it. It was there before I arrived. It will be there after I'm gone. The drainage has been keeping its own record for longer than anyone has been running cameras in it, longer than I have been hunting it. What I saw on September 24th has been in that country for a long time. Longer than the question of what it is has been a question anyone was asking. And on one morning in September, it made a decision about me, and I am still not sure what I did to deserve it, but I know what I know. I know what the rifle did and didn't do. I know what 3 rounds from a cartridge designed for large, dangerous game told me when they told me nothing. I know the shape in the tree line and the length of the stride and the quality of the attention when it turned and looked at me. I know what a 600-pound grizzly with 3 seasons in that corridor sounded like when it decided to leave, and I know the direction it went, and I know what came into the space it vacated. I know that I sat on a granite ledge for 18 hours and heard nothing that told me I was still being followed. I know that the following June I sat on a log and waited and was allowed to wait. And I know the drainage in northwestern Montana has been keeping its own account of who moves through it, long before I arrived with 8 years of knowledge and a caliber designed for the largest animals in this ecosystem. The account it kept on the morning of September 24th is the account I've given you. I haven't gone back in September. I'm not sure I will. There's a question I can't resolve, whether going back is an act of understanding or an act of testing something that has already been decided, whether it matters to whatever accounting is kept in that corridor, whether I return or not. What I can say is this: something that was there before I arrived and will be there after I'm gone moved through that drainage on one morning in September and made a decision about me that I am still trying to be worthy of. The rest of it lives in the corridor, in the prints that were in the mud at the game trail on a June morning when the dew was still on the grass, and a man who had survived something sat on a log and waited and was allowed to sit there as long as he needed. As long as he needed. I needed a long time. I'm still needing it.